The year is 2016. Dead Frontier has been out for almost a decade and going strong, but like Bob Dylan said, the times they were a-changin'. A lot of the core infrastructure for DF1 was losing support in modern browsers, and to combat this, a standalone client was built for DF1 and the browser-based portions of the game were rewritten in HTML5. Basically, a few years later, DF2 was released. So we're going to take a look at Dead Frontier 2, the gameplay, story, and my overall thoughts on the game in its current state. The first thing that immediately stood out to me when I started DF2 was the departure from the top-down camera. I definitely expected this, but I didn't expect the direction that they went with it. Instead, we have a third-person Resident Evil style perspective. Now, it's like really specifically Resident Evil. The slow walk while reloading, the crosshair slowly narrowing to where you'll actually hit, it all feels really familiar. That said, the art style of the first game carries over in the second and almost feel it more than you can see it way. When I first loaded in, I walked around the police station for a bit picking up quests before heading out into the world to try to work my way out of poverty. One of the first missions the stock Unity asset gave me was to just kill some zombies. It seemed easy enough, so I walked outside and whacked to my heart's content. Unfortunately, my first impression for Melee was not great. So here's what's going down. Ammo's expensive, and frankly, Melee isn't going to be the ultra frugal, ultra effective option like in DF1, at least not right off the bat. When a game has really limited movement, players want to remain in control as much as possible. But using Melee locks you into an animation every hit, which is fine on its own, but the animation is just painfully slow and the camera angle doesn't make it obvious when you'll actually make contact with your target. I understand the thought process behind your character sucking at things at first. I mean, it builds like an immense sense of accomplishment whenever you don't anymore. I mean, look at Kingdom Come Deliverance or Kenshi. The difference with those games is that you're consistently bad at everything. I just think that there's too big of a discrepancy between your initial effectiveness with guns compared to melee weapons. Anyone can swing a 2x4 as hard as they can to bash a head in, but not everybody can shoot under life or death pressure. Despite this, I eventually just shot the zombies that needed shot and headed inside for my pittance. Funnily enough, at one point I noticed that the debuffs for the starting clothes far outweighed the upsides. So naturally, in the finest Dark Souls tradition, I stripped my character of the damage clothes he was wearing and just opted for going buck. So I took my naked character and went out to do some questing to get my money and levels up so I could maybe afford some clothes eventually. Unfortunately, I ran into something that I hated. DF2 makes me feel a little silly for complaining about the lack of completed quest notifications in the DF1 video, which was honestly unfounded. The game had a fucking notification. When you're completing quest objective, you're forced to pull up your mission log anytime you want to see your progress to make sure that you finished a quest. Additionally, there's no HUD element to show your active quests. Why? I think that this is an aspect of the HUD that was sacrificed to keep the Resident Evil aesthetic, and I think the game suffers for it. It's a grindy MMO, a fact that DF1 has seemingly embraced in both the HUD elements and the gameplay. How did this not carry over? In fact, DF2 has a criminally small amount of information on your screen at any given moment. You have to open up your fucking inventory to see how much health you have. This game's UI is really bad. My advice, stop trying to be DayZ and embrace your game for what it is. Intermits questing and looting and questing, I noticed that there was a boss fight area that was offering up some serious rewards for killing a fingerhead. I thought, hey, it's the starting area, I'm breezing through most things at this point, let's give it a whirl. Boy was I wrong. I never died, but I was close multiple times. My best weapon did fuck all damage to the boss, which I should have expected in retrospect. I found out later when I was scrolling through the bestiary that you take damage when you aim at this guy's head. I think that's a mechanic with this boss that's actually pretty neat. It's sort of surface level, but I think punishing players for mindlessly aiming isn't a bad idea. I've been heavily relying on my ability to just spam headshots on the regular zombies pretty much the entire game at this point. This spike in difficulty and complexity was a welcome addition. This is a familiar feeling that I had in DF1, where it just kind of got a little bit boring to actually look through everything and looting, but the idea that I have a really long way to go to handle real enemies was a real breath of fresh air. When I got back to the police station, I realized I hadn't done any of the tutorial quests. I went ahead and talked to the chief and started to work my way through them. I know something interesting though. People are constantly selling their low tier clothes for like $1 to $5, the default amount that comes up whenever you go to sell them. Turns out that you can actually scrap these items for closer to 6 or 12. If you keep buying and scrapping these items, you will never lose money as long as people are selling their items. This probably becomes redundant really quickly, but you can probably make enough for a low ammo, food, or medicine in a pinch. I did this until I got bored of it, which didn't take long at all, and it netted me around 300 in less than 10 minutes. On a similar note, I want to talk about trading for a minute. I really appreciate that the open market concept has returned from DF1. I haven't played every MMO ever, but it seems relatively unique that there are no NPC traders in either of the games. Any item's value is determined by the drop rate of it and the demand for the item. There's also a new mechanic where certain items have a finite number of trades that you can do with them, which can also affect the value. For example, if you buy a killer M4 that has no trades left, you know that you're not going to be able to recoup your money when you inevitably want or need something better. So if you fast forward a few days, I finally noticed a mechanic that seems like a cornerstone in the gameplay loop of DF2. I logged back in and noticed that I have new quests available, which wasn't surprising. What was, however, is the fact that the map is randomized each week. I think this is a really cool mechanic in theory and lets even experienced players maintain that sense of exploration long after the initial discovery phase is over. The outside landmarks didn't seem to change a whole lot, but the different types of buildings seem to be in entirely new places. This, partnered with the fog shrouding the map, makes each city block seems like a surprise each time. With the actual in-game map being so much better than DF1, this is an extremely welcome change. I have one gripe with it though. When I got my first set of missions, I couldn't do any of the objectives that required me to loot, like a hospital for example. In retrospect, there may have been hospitals, but since they weren't highlighted in green like all of the other quest-related locations, I had no way of telling besides hovering over each block. It's really not a huge deal, but for new players, I think it's sort of discouraging to get a quest to only not be able to complete it. I think with only minor tweaks to the RNG for buildings, it could be fixed pretty easily. So far, I'm thoroughly enjoying my experience with DF2. I know that's probably a hot take among the community, but I enjoyed my first 10 hours of the game a lot more than DF1. The initial experience was just so much better. DF2, even if it's not as good as DF1, was a lot quicker to show its hand. I think a lot of times, the community behind a game can lose sight of what it's like for a new player that's just being introduced to it. I'm definitely guilty of it. My favorite game, Rainbow Six Siege, is not welcoming to new players whatsoever. Furthermore, I've even felt a lot of disdain for the opinions of new players. So honestly, if it feels like some of my takes were a little too hot or just bad in general, keep in mind that this is, with an open mind, my honest thoughts about the game. Especially with DF2, I don't have the lens of nostalgia or the sunken cost into the game. So with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So this will probably be my last Dead Frontier video for a while, but I plan to live stream DF2 for like once a week for a couple of weeks after this video comes out. So if you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, and for the live stream there'll be a community post, so you can check that out and kind of get like a schedule for it. Thanks for watching.